and welcome. My name is Beri Meric. I'm CEO at Ivy and the chapter chair of YPO Metro New York. And it is my absolute pleasure to introduce all of you to Dr. Eva Selhub. Eva, welcome. How are you today?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm well. Thank you.
I'm so glad you're here. I'm wishing you and everyone joining us today a very happy Friday. And this is a perfect conversation as we prepare to go into what is, I'm sure, a very well-deserved weekend for everybody. We're going to have a conversation about how we can all supercharge our health destiny, how we can be most resilient, and most importantly, how we can all thrive. We're all performing at high levels already, but how can we make it as sustainable and powerful as possible? And Eva is truly the ideal guide for this conversation. She is an internationally recognized expert, physician, author, speaker, and consultant in the fields of stress, resilience, mind-body medicine, and working with the natural environment to achieve maximum health and well-being. She is on staff at Harvard Medical School, as well as being a clinical associate of the Benson Henry Institute for Mind-Body Medicine at Mass General Hospital. So Eva, welcome once again. To help us kick off, I'd love for you to share with us, what is it that, like the biggest mistake, recurring mistake that you see people making when it comes to this particular topic? Why is it so hard for us to do what we know is good for us to do?
Well, it's a really cool, a couple things. One is I'm a former instructor in medicine at Harvard. I actually went solo a couple of years ago. I might have to fix that on my bio, but let's talk about what is the number one thing that keeps you from being able to really achieve maximal thriving potentiality, right? That is you. So basically, your habits are formed early on when your brain is developing and you're learning about what helps you feel good. That's how you develop a habit. You say, well, it feels good to be able to walk from point A to point B. And if it didn't feel good, you wouldn't walk. It feels good when I eat something, so that's why you eat. And so we develop coping habits that allow us to get through difficult times. And so when you're going through a difficult time, you're going to go to that coping habit. It's like trying to think about how to tie your shoes as if for the first time every single day. You're not going to think about it. It's automatic. And so no matter how much you know that you should do this or you should do that, when the going gets rough, you're going to go to coping habits that help you feel good. You're going to go for that pint of ice cream or that glass of wine or whatever it is. You're not going to go towards, eating a salad when you're feeling anxious. And so then you find yourself sabotaging your intention, which makes you feel badly about yourself. Usually will shame or blame yourself, which triggers more stress, which then triggers more coping behaviors that are automatic. And before you know it, you've sabotaged yourself. And you're saying, wait a minute, I've just gained 10 pounds when my intention was to lose 10 pounds. How did I do that? That's how it happens. We self-sabotage. And that's because we have coping behaviors that have been part of us our whole lives. And it's going to take self-awareness and self-regulation to be able to change that programming so that the new skills, the ones you've learned about that are in all those millions of self-help books that don't seem to help people, that those actually can actually sink in and take shape.
Excellent. So my key takeaway from that is when the going gets tough, when we're facing huge challenges, we go to what gives us comfort. And often where we go actually sabotages where we're trying to go, and it creates this vicious cycle that we then have even greater difficulty getting out of. So I really want to figure out, with your help and guidance on behalf of our whole community, how we can overcome this. I know that you've developed, on the one hand, like your own framework, the 6 pillars of resilience, to give people all the ingredients needed. So what I'd love to do is, first of all, get like a bird's eye view of like, what are those pillars, the key drivers for having the resilience to thrive sustainably. And then once we've gotten that quick overview of it, I'd love to dive into each one to really get your thoughts on what can we do very practically, actionably right away to integrate them into our lives. So if you would, what are the 6 pillars? And then we'll go from there.
Well, first I want to give the umbrella. The umbrella of the pillar is self-awareness. right? So if you're not self-aware, then, you know, none of this is going to work. So this is about you being aware of you, your place in the world, in your own body, and being able to know the difference between one thing and the other so that you can make a choice. So that's sort of the umbrellas. First, say, deciding that I'm the one that's going to make a choice in my life, that my life is happening with me, not to me. So that's the first thing, is just the attitude of saying that I'm a co-creator of my life. It's not, you know, I'm not a victim of it, and I have choice. So that's sort of the umbrella piece. And the other part of the umbrella is understanding that at the core of this is the stress response. So stress is actually at the core of all this, not because it's a negative thing, but because it's part of life. That's just how the body works. That we're in a place of balance, and then we're out of balance, and that's just life. It's all the time. So being hungry is a stress. Being cold is a stress, and the body will correct itself to get to a place of balance, which is why all we want to do is feel comfortable. So that's what the umbrella is, to understand human nature, or the nature of every living thing on this planet, is to find balance and comfort, all of it. So everything that drives you, even your desire to succeed as a leader, to make millions of dollars, is because whatever you get, when you get it, is going to help you feel good. So that's the drive. So that's sort of the umbrella that drives us. So then we look at the pillars of how do we find balance in the best possible way so that we can thrive, right? Rather than dive. So, right? So stress can either motivate or it can kill. And for most of you who are all very successful people, the stress, that adrenaline rush has gotten you to be where you are now. So those are the wonderful things about it. But if we're not finding our balance, not taking care, it can cause us to crash and burn. So we want to address the pillars where we can find the balance within each of those pillars so that we can thrive and be resilient. The first pillar is our physical health. So that we're looking at exercise, eating nutrient-rich foods, getting restful sleep, meditation practices, social support connections that we have. We look at spending time in nature, all those things that physically help us do better, thrive. Then we look at our emotional health. You know, your emotional intelligence, if you will, to use that word, that phrase. Are you able to be connected with your emotions? Your emotions aren't there to drive your behavior, they're there to guide. They're to guide you about how imbalanced you might be, and to use your emotions to learn and to grow. So it's about being able to regulate those emotions so that you can find a place of balance, rather than use those emotions to hurt yourself or hurt others, which is really a big factor for most people. The third piece is your mindset. You know, again, that attitude. What is my mindset? Do I look at life as happening to me or with me? Do I have a growth mindset, or do I have a scarcity mindset? You know, how is it that I look at things? How do I look at people? So it's being able to shift that mindset when we start going negative. Am I an optimist or a pessimist? Do I tend to put a positive twist on things and find the silver linings? Do I have an attitude of gratitude versus ineptitude? So we look at mindset. So it's getting that mind to be balanced and strong. Then we will look at your spirituality. What does that mean? Your connection to belonging to something larger. That's just all that is. So it's whether you have a religion that you believe in, a spiritual belief, or you believe in nature, but whatever it is, it's believing that you are part of something greater and bigger, which we know through the science actually conveys a healthier person, a more optimistic person, a more resilient person. So that's the fourth pillar. The fifth pillar are your relationships, your intimate relationships, your collegial relationships, sort of the one-on-one. We know that people who have strong and healthy and quality relationships, and that's key, are stronger, are healthier, are more positive. They're more resilient. So it's looking at your relationship. Is it a balanced relationship? Is there a give and take? Or are you giving more? Or are you taking more? Right? So a lot of, and I'm not dismissing the men in the group, but for the most part, women tend to be givers. It's part of our fight. For men, the general tendency is to fight or flight. And for women, it's to tend and befriend. So we tend to start giving more when we're stressed, but we're not necessarily taking, right? A lot of people who are strong and in leadership positions aren't actually good at asking for help. And so then they can end up burning out. So being able to be aware of the balance of the relationship, the quality of that relationship. And then lastly, it's about the community and leadership, or your team, if you will. So when we belong to a community and we take a leadership role, we actually become healthier, and we enable a healthy culture around us that, again, supports us to be stronger. So they coexist. So those are the 6 pillars: physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, relationship, team, and leadership.
Excellent, Eva. I'm really excited to dive in. For everybody who is participating live, I strongly encourage you, as we dive into these pillars, to really think about specific challenges that you're facing or opportunities that you think you have to really improve and help others improve who are around you. Any questions you might have, please type them into the Q&A box. And the latter half of this conversation is going to be all about having Eva answer your questions and, basically grapple with your perspectives, what you're grappling with. So Eva, I love that you gave us this umbrella before giving us the 6 pillars. So as we dive into them, just as a kind of a key lens that I'm looking at all of this through, based on what you said, is like, it all comes down to self-awareness on the one hand. If we're not aware of what's going on, then it's much harder for us to deal with. So as we go through these pillars, we're going to figure out, how does this apply to me? What am I doing well or not well? But on the other hand, what we're really solving for is how to deal with our stress response so that we are maximizing the chances of balance and minimizing the kind of the out of balance times that we have. So starting with personal physical health as the first balance, we all know we should go to the gym and run more and like do good stuff. Tell us here what practically you've seen to be like a game changer for people when it comes to this, for those who are maybe struggling to do the physical exercise that they think they need. Like, what would you suggest as something very practical for all of us to keep in mind when it comes to physical well-being?
So the first thing is not to should on yourself. That's the first thing. Every time you should on yourself, that actually represents a limited belief system, a limited, like a fixed growth mindset, if you will, if you want to use language, more business-like language, but it's self-limiting, and it's not actually going to promote healthy behaviors. So I'm actually going to have the group, if you will, do this exercise with me. And I want you to should on yourself. Not the other word. So I want you to should on yourself, and I want you to say, I should have exercised today, or I should have eaten healthier, or I should have something related to your health that you should have done. And I want you to say the statement to yourself or out loud, and I wanted you to notice what happens to your breath and what happens to your chest specifically. What is it? Does it feel open, contracted, relaxed? What does it feel like? And you can actually answer for me, for everybody. So when you do it, you just should on yourself. So when you should, what happened?
Yeah, I felt a shortness of breath, a little kind of heaviness around the chest area.
And do you feel motivated?
No, just annoyed at myself.
Right, you feel motivated, you feel defeated. You're unlikely to go and exercise if that's really what you should have done, right? Now, I just want you to say the exact same statement, but say could instead. I could have exercised. What happens?
Yeah, bright opportunity, kind of a possibility, yeah.
Okay, so this is why self-awareness is so important, because your words affect your physicality. Your stress response is involved in everything, and it's what allows you to monitor your ability to adapt and thrive on this earth, like every living organism. And so your actions, your words, your thoughts, everything that you do is affecting that physiological response that is saying, yes, do it, no, don't do it. So negative statements related to your health are going to affect your health, both physiologically, because as the stress response is activated, it actually does create more inflammation and increased heart rate, blood pressure, muscle tension. If that continues, you do end up getting pathological illnesses for different reasons, and I can get into that. But just again, your words alone will motivate you. So you can see when you tell your children or your staff you should be doing something, you're not motivating them. So it's also not a good leadership quality, right? So could, on the other hand, is still being accountable. It's not being Pollyanna, but it's actually giving me the choice of saying, well, yeah, I could do this. And you can feel how everything opens up and you actually breathe more. These are all things, now it might seem silly, but in that one word change, you've actually improved your health because you've lowered stress response reactivity, heart rate, blood pressure, and lengthened breath, which is increasing parasympathetic nervous system activity, creating more relaxation. You're triggering dopaminergic reward systems in the brain that are saying, I can, it's possible. And now you're more motivated. You're more likely to do something that is helpful to you. So to answer, that's one of the things, like I said, that sabotages us. When you said what's keeping us from being able to do these things, that's a big one. Is shooting on yourself, is shaming yourself for that. So
so you should be coulding on yourself. So to replace the word should with could, I think that's powerful. Just curious, in that example, so for me, it was I should have run this morning. Then I turned it to I could have run this morning. Is it like in that past tense that you should say it? Or is it I could still run today? Like just curious whether it's...
So that's the thing. So the next step after could, right? The next step after could is to then create a growth language. It's like, what can I do? Right? So it's in the past tense, I could have, right? Moving should to could, and then moving into present mode, what can I do? Given what is, what can I do? What are my options? I don't have time for a run, but I could go for a walk. I can do some stretching. You see, so we're having like motivation is now there to then co-create a more positive present and future. And now you're starting moving into behaviors and practices and programming that are going to be more helpful for you. So honestly, the number one physical thing that you could do, well, two, but let's start with one, is nutrition. 80 to 90% of health problems are solved by changing their diet, right, to a healthy one. First of all, no dieting. That's, again, restricted, limiting mindset. Saying, I can't, I'm not allowed, it's bad. Remove bad or good out of the equation. Those are judging. So again, this is part of, they're integrating with the mindset of removing judgment of good or bad. Everything is, and you're seeing whether it's nutrient rich or nutrient poor. Is it going to fuel me or is it going to ruin me, right? So when you're thinking about, especially physical health, but then probably everything else, is you want to think about your body and your brain are a Maserati or a Porsche or whatever car you love. It's not a pickup truck. It can't just have any type of oil in there. It needs high octane fuel. It needs really good maintenance, right? It needs to be carefully driven. So that is your body, and especially your brain, because your brain is this enclosed structure, and what gets in can't get out, and what you eat is connected to your brain. So if you have a lot of inflammation, that's getting into your brain. Oxidative stress is affecting your brain and literally damaging the brain. So you can't think, you get emotional, you're moody, you're depressed, you're anxious, and you have a quicker cognitive decline, or chances at risk of having dementia, not to mention all the other issues that can happen. So I don't like to think about fear-based motivation. I think about engaging somebody and saying, well, I want to feel good. I want to perform. And so you're all high performers. You want to perform, so put the right fuel in your body so that you can perform. So having a nutrient-rich food in your body, that doesn't mean you can't have junk food. It just means limiting it to about 20% of your intake. So 80-20. If you want to do better, do 90-10. But if you really, really want something, have it. Because denial is going to create more binging and more shame. If you want to have that cookie, have it, but do it mindfully. Enjoy it. Every morsel, every bite. So you eat less, you eat slower, and you're engaged in something that you have a lot of gratitude and appreciation for, which lowers the stress response. Activity lowers inflammation, and so on. Your body can handle a lot, but not all at the same time.
Excellent. The 80-20 rule is actually really powerful because I was just thinking that's like 1 out of 5 things that you eat in a given day, or, it's one unhealthy day for 5 healthy days. Like, you can look at it in whichever way, but it actually gives you the ability to quote unquote indulge in things that give you joy,
That's
but
right.
isn't driving your entire, like it's not the entirety of what you're putting into your body, and gives this maybe like a bit of that comfort, like the
That's right.
valve, without going completely cold turkey, just eating salads all the time.
And what you want to do is all through the day and every day start practicing self-awareness. How do I feel? And this is the key about the stress response in the umbrella. Your body is a vessel, an electrical vessel. And we were born feeling. That means we're sentient beings. We have these antennae that feel. We feel through our eyes, we feel through our hearing, our taste buds, our sensations on our body, our intuition. But all these sensations feed our brain so that our brain knows how to behave in life. And so, like I said, we've developed coping habits through life because we've felt certain things and we've discovered that when I do this, I feel better. So in order to reprogram that, you have to pay attention to how something feels so that then you can reprogram a new behavior. So pay attention to when you eat, how you feel. Pay attention to how you feel in the morning when you get, a really good quality sleep versus you don't, and how that affects you throughout the day, because now you're going to be encouraged to get more sleep. So find the things that promote your energy, not cause you to lose energy. Life is going to cause you to use up the gas in your gas tank. That's just life. But you want to continuously replenish it so you can make the drive. There are certain things that are going to cause leaks in your gas tank. So no matter how much you replenish the fuel, it's never going to get up high because you keep leaking. And those leaking are going to be some of the negative habits, the negative thoughts, the negative perceptions, and so on and so forth. So there are things that are in our control, that we can control those leaks so that that gas tank is always being replenished and staying full.
Excellent. Thank you, Eva. So my quick question here, and then I'd like us to just go through the remaining pillars with minimal interruption from me. But for people who, just as an example, I think this will apply to other areas too. For those who are currently in a suboptimal physical routine, whether it's their sleep, their food, their physical exercise, you name it, right? Just not where they want to be. And if you were to share with them, okay, if you wanted to quote unquote turn things around with a sustainable foundation that you can build on, over the next week, do X, Y, and Z to just get started. You already gave us these really powerful tools, but like very specifically, if we were your clients, like on a one-on-one engagement, what would you actually have us do over the next week to actually start integrating these so that we can really turn it around? Because my reaction oftentimes is a hard reset. I'm going to start running every day and eating only avocados.
Remember, we want this to be sustainable. So if you go hard out all at once, you're not going to sustain it, and you're going to also feel like you're forcing yourself to do something. We want this to become a habit, so that it's something that you enjoy doing. You do it because it feels good, and you're doing it because you want to, not because you have to. Okay. So the first thing you want to create a sleep routine. So this is going to be hard for the workaholics. I had to work on this myself. But no computers, no electronics, at least an hour before bed. Don't watch the news, don't look at Twitter, don't look at Facebook, whatever that is. No social media, off the grid for at least an hour before bed. It's a time, preferably 2, where it's time where you just are gonna bring that stress response down. Cortisol levels are supposed to be down at night. If they're up, it's gonna cause inflammation and destroy your sleep. You're not gonna go to bed if you're being chased by a lion, which is what your brain is thinking. So an hour to 2 hours before bedtime, you want to work on sleep hygiene. Your bedroom is only for sex and sleep, nothing else. So no work in the bedroom. It's just a place where you sleep. Make sure it's quiet, it's dark, and get used to having a set schedule for sleep where you go to bed at the same time, you wake up at the same time, and if you have one of those Fitbits or whatever, you can actually monitor your sleep quality. That's one thing that you can easily do, is start creating a sleep routine, sleep hygiene. Get into the habit of this is what I just did with my client yesterday, is 20 minutes a day You know, the recommendation is 30 minutes a day of walking, but we're just going to do 20 minutes. You can do it in 5-minute increments, or you can do it in 10-minute increments, or 20 minutes altogether. Go for a walk. So all you need to do is just go for a walk. If you can do 30, that's the recommendation by the USDA. It's 30 minutes a day. Just go for a walk. But I'm going to start with 10 to 20 in separate increments. Just move your body. If it means, you know, you're parking your car, you know, and having to walk a little bit, great. You want to walk around the block once and then do that 10 times, great. You know, it's several times during the day, but just let 20 minutes of movement accumulate during your day. If you want to throw in a stretch or whatever, you can, but don't have to. But just get used to the idea of moving your body and walking more. That's 2. 3 is start paying attention to what you're eating. When your attempt is, as you mentioned, 1 out of 5 things can be whatever the heck you want. Everything else outside of the grocery store. So fresh produce, so it's fairly simple. Plenty of vegetables, some fruit, lean proteins, nuts and seeds, and whole grains. Nothing should be bigger than the palm of your hand. But if you want to have more than the palm of your hand of vegetables, have as much as you want. That's unlimited. But everything else about the palm of your hand. If you want more, that's fine, but just be aware of how that feels. Okay, that's nutrition. 4 would be in the walks outside. See if you can actually get out into nature, or just bring a plant into your room, have a room with a view, or have pictures of nature all around you so that you can then incorporate that feeling of where we actually belong, which is being out in nature. So those are just 5 things that I would start with that are very, very doable, and you can bring that into your life. And in that doing thing, again, just be mindful of how you feel. Try to engage your senses in the experience and just to see, like, is this helping me feel better? Just those 5 simple things. So not big changes in your life.
Excellent. Yeah, no matter, I think, how busy we may be, those are extremely achievable. So thank you for that. And we'll be sending a summary to everybody on the key learnings here. So for those who weren't able to note it down, I'll go ahead. Eva, you have one more?
I forgot about the meditation piece. So there's plenty of apps, you know, like Calm and 10% Happier. I highly recommend them. I've got free stuff on YouTube with my meditations. You don't need a lot of time. Like, my stuff is less than 10 minutes. You want to do it before bed. You want to do it when you start in the morning, at a break during the day. Find 10 minutes to quiet the mind, quiet the body, to get into a place of restful peace and relaxation. That's going to be useful for you. If you don't feel that that's something you can do, this is what I recommend is set your timer on your watch. Every hour, 10 deep breaths. And this is how you do it. You breathe in and you count 1, 2, 3, and then exhale, count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you allow the exhalation to be longer than the inhalation, which is going to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system. So you can start with 10 breaths and work your way up to a minute every hour.
Powerful. Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to be doing that right after this conversation. I really appreciate it. Yeah. Okay. Amazing. Thank you so much, Eva. And like I was saying, we'll be sending the summary to everybody in case you weren't able to note those powerful suggestions down. Let's continue on the pillars here. I know you already started touching quite a few of them, but next one up is emotional balance. Any key practice that you want to share additionally, in addition to what you've shared so far?
Yeah, again, remember, your emotions aren't bad. Your negative emotions aren't bad. Your emotions are just basically part of your sensory system that's letting you know where you are and if you're out of balance. And usually that negative emotion is going to be connected with an emotional memory, which then leads to the behavior pattern. And so the problem with your negative emotions is they will trigger negative thinking and limited beliefs, all or nothing kind of statements, where we project our past into our present and in our future. And that's not only going to affect us, but it's going to affect the people around us. So the key is to be self-aware of just noticing. Just notice when you're in a negative state and don't wrong yourself for it. Okay. You're not bad. Don't should on yourself for being upset. The first thing you want to do is honor the way you feel. So validate, I have every right to feel this way. So the first thing is label and validate. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling frustrated. And the minute you start labeling it and validating it, you're actually giving yourself some space to be that way. You're not saying, oh, I should do this or I should do that. And then you can say, well, pay attention to the body. What am I feeling in my body? How is my body reacting to that feeling? So if you were to think about something that makes you upset right now, you can just go ahead and, like, you're frustrated, you're angry, you're worried, something. Just allow it, the emotion to come up, label it, and then notice what happens in the body when you do that. Where do you feel the tension show up? Is it in your jaw, your shoulders, your chest, your abdomen? And just notice it and say to yourself, I am feeling contraction or chest contracted, neck contracted, jaw tight, and just label it. So label the sensation in your body and then breathe into that area of tension in the body. So just like we did the in 3 out 6, find that area of tension. You can do that right now. So think about the negative situation, label the emotion, label the experience in the body, breathe in on 3, out on 6, into that area of the body, and then allow that area of tension to start moving with your breath like a curtain moves in the breeze. Nice and easy, just let that tension, it's just energy. So you're going to allow that energy to move with your breath like a curtain that moves in the breeze. Nice and easy, so it starts getting released, it starts being dissipating into the wind. Now notice how the body feels. How does it feel? More relaxed. What's happening with your emotion? Think about the situation. Are you as emotionally charged? No. How long did that take? 20, 30 seconds. Okay, that is an example of emotional regulation. It's being aware, not judging, making a choice that I want to be more balanced. When I'm more balanced, my mind is open and I'm able to see a situation more clearly, more effectively. Nobody makes a good decision when they're upset. It's impossible. You don't have access. It's like when you're being chased by a lion, you're not going to figure out how to do your taxes. So your amygdala, your fear centers send messages to the higher brain centers, shut them down. So you don't have the ability to do higher processing, intellectual reasoning. It literally goes away. So when we calm down, we open up, we calm the stress response down, we create that sense of relaxation, you create lateralization in the brain, you slow down brain waves, so we have access to higher thinking, bigger perspective. We're also more sociable, so we're more likely to talk about it, get the support we need, and so on and so forth. So that's the key for emotional regulation, emotional intelligence, but that is one simple exercise that you can do.
Now, what I love about it is, I'll speak for myself, like when emotions are running high, the very last thing going through your mind is to logically, like, how do you deconstruct it? What you suggested here is, it just gives you very easy steps. Like, what is the emotion? Where is it? I'm going to breathe into it. And then, how am I feeling now? Right. So it's just, and the fact that you can do that in a minute, like, when people say, I just need a minute.
Yeah. And the thing is sometimes the situation is too close, right? And you are really upset. So you do need to take more of a time out. So you do go for a walk or whatever it is. But again, that's just one simple technique. But the other times is you can use the emotion to dig deeper into yourself to do a healing, right? So a lot of the work that I do with people is we use that emotion to go into the body, because the body actually will give you a memory that wants healing from your past, from your childhood. So we actually have the ability to heal the past so that you can actually have a more aligned presence.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Eva. Continuing to move through the 6 pillars that you've put together. You've got 2, like, mental soundness, mindset, as well as spiritual connection, as like the ones that are like still within like our individual control. Share with us a little bit of those together, and then we'll dive into the relationships we have before going on to the audience questions.
Yeah, and those we can merge together, because ultimately, the goal is to have that open mindset, to have a big perspective, to have a positive mindset, and to be able to see patterns and connections. So as leaders, you need to be able, whether your company is 10 people or it's 100 people or 1,000 people, you need to be able to see not only the big picture and be able to take all facets into account, but you have to be able to take in the past, project into the future, and be able to adapt to challenges as they come, right? So you can't do that when you have a narrow lens. You have to have a wide angle lens and then go into, it's like a camera. You have the narrow lens that you zoom in when you need to and then go back out when you need to. So you have to have that flexibility to be able to zoom in and out. And so that flexibility is lost when you're under stress and you're under duress or when you're emotionally upset, because our negative, we all have, we essentially all have two stories. Right? We have the story of victory and the story of victimization. We all have it, it's there. And it comes out when we either think life is happening with us or it's happening to us. And it's just there. And when we're upset, that the victimization story will come out. So again, having that self-awareness, that's what's happening, and choosing to have that victory mindset, to be aware of what that other story is and when it comes out, and to take measures that we need, like the should versus could, to be able to shift ourselves into the mindset we know that we have, which is that more resilient, positive, larger, open-minded type of mindset. So, that's an example of the should versus could, where we're able to change mindset and create motivation and positivity. And so then spirituality comes in, because when we feel like we belong and when we have the ability to, believe in something bigger, again, that supports us to have that more connected sense of mindset, that ability to see bigger things, to have that, know that, what we do affects other people, and that there's a cause and effect to things. We just are able to see the sort of the larger connection between things and patterns, which again, allow us to manage uncertainty better.
Excellent. And just on that spirituality point real quick, there's a lot of, people have their own perceptions of what that is. For some, they think that's religion. For others, they think it's, holding hands, the kumbaya stuff. For others, they think other things. The best definition I've heard, actually, in one of our previous talk with Ruzbe, it was spirituality is simply being your best self, like your highest self. So share with us, for those, given that there's a spectrum of those who believe in greater things, whether it's religion, humanity, their family, share with us whether that's only limited to people that believe in something bigger already, or whether, like, what has been a hack for spirituality you found for people who feel disconnected?
Yeah, so for me, the spirituality is the sense that you belong to something greater than. That's it. The sense that you belong to something greater than, that you are part of something greater than, which then ultimately helps you feel that you are greater than, which then goes with this other person's definition. So for me, again, feel it into your heart. I belong to something greater than. So what that greater than is, that's up to you. But it's the greater than. So a lot of people find their greater than in nature. That I belong to this amazing, incredible galaxy and planet and universe. That's greater than. Right? It's that feeling of, So that's it. If you want to tap into spirituality, tap into awe, right? When you go, wow, that's a miracle, right? When you look at the most beautiful sunset you've ever seen, when you're watching a child walk for the first time, when you're gazing into the eyes of somebody you absolutely adore, that's awe, right? That state of love, that state of awe, that's spirituality. So so for me, this is what I teach, is how do we connect with spirituality without going to church or temple or saying kumbaya? There's many ways, because we're connecting with the feeling, right? Remember, we're sentient beings. All we have to do is connect with the feeling, and then we have access to what we want, right? So if you, let's say, I want to make $1 million. Okay, that's great. Why? Well, because then I can buy whatever I want, and then I can help the poor. Okay, but what is that going to make you feel when you do that? So that's the end game. The end game is the feeling you want to have, right? And we talked about this before we got on this call, was, when I said, like, most people, they're not driven to be healthy. They're driven to be happy, which is why so many people aren't healthy, because they're thinking they could be happy by doing all these things, not realizing that they have access to that happiness. So same with spirituality, you have access to it because it's a feeling. And there's different modalities to get to that feeling. And one easy way is just to connect with the feeling of awe. Gaze at something incredible and go, wow, that's amazing. Wow. So that feeling of awe, that's one very simple way to connect with spirituality.
Excellent. I'm so glad we dove deeper into that. And like nature itself, like all the miracles are around us, just looking up into the sky, right? But just connecting.
How did that happened? But you know, one of the things I like people to do is I want to think about your own existence and what a miracle it is that you are here today on this call. Like everything that's gone in to make this happen today, the technology, you know, your birth, your upbringing, you got through, how much trauma you got through, whatever, like that is amazing. So, I mean, every single human being and their ability to be here today, given everything that's happened in life. And even without that, just the mere fact how the human body works, the brilliance of each cell talking each other. And it's just, it's brilliant. So the minute you start seeing value and brilliance and awe, you're starting to connect with that sense of spirituality.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Eva. So as we dive into the audience questions, last question for you is these two remaining pillars. Obviously, we don't live in a vacuum. So no matter how much self-regulation, self-awareness, and so forth, you know, the world has a way of, you know, shaking us up, good and bad, of pushing us in different directions. So share with us, both on the, in terms of like intimate relationships, as well as broader community, what are the key things to keep in mind to make sure that, you know, we can apply these concepts, not just to ourselves, but in our families, as well as in our organizations. And from there, we're gonna dive into all the audience questions.
Just remember, we're human beings, which means we're social beings. We weren't meant to exist alone. When we evolved in the wilderness, we had to have a community. We had to have one another in order to survive. We depend on touch. All these things actually stimulate a hormone called oxytocin, which is, you might have heard as a love hormone. And when we actually engage in relationships, social connection, oxytocin levels rise, which allows us to bond, as well as dopamine and serotonin, which are neurotransmitters. These are all feel-good hormones, as well as morphine-like substances that fly through your brain to make the connection so enjoyable that you want to go back for more. That's what allows us to be a species that can stay together and allows us to survive. So there's a biological pull that drives us to want to be together, and then the question is, how do we stay together? And so that's sort of that idea of when you are self-regulated, when you are connected and aware, you are then able to then interact, communicate, and do everything better with the people around you. You know, you're stronger, you know, we're stronger together, better together, united we stand, divided we fall, right? So it's learning about your relationships with other people, making sure that it's an equal give and receive, that there are shared values, ability to communicate. If you're self-regulating your emotions, you don't, you know, project on the other person with your emotions. You're able to then discuss more effectively your needs. You're more clear about what you want so that you can let the other person know what you want. And then you have a more balanced relationship. So that's sort of one thing that you can do in your relationship, but your relationships support you to be who you are, not bring you down to what you're not. Right? So again, it's fuel. So we want to look at our relationships as fuel for us to thrive and ways we can support other people to thrive. Remember that we're all either a rock or a pebble or a boulder. That means when you throw a pebble and a boulder into the water, they're both going to create ripples. You're just either going to be creating huge ripples or small ripples, but they're ripples nonetheless, which means it affects everything else around you. As a leadership position, you're a boulder. So everything you do, every way that you act is affecting everyone around you. And if you want them to be supportive and loving towards you, it's important for you to be self-regulated and in balance. And then as loving and connected with them. And now you've got sort of just, you know, a one big party.
Wow, that was an incredible, incredible summary. Thank you, Eva. Powerful. I really appreciate it. I think for all the leaders on this call, just being aware of the boulder type nature of like our actions, I think it just really highlights and puts a light on the fact that there's so many consequences, how self-aware we are, how self-regulated we are, and what environments we create for others. So I'm going to dive into these questions. Let's try to do 1 minute per question to the extent possible. Obviously, they all deserve more time. And for anybody else who hasn't asked a question, try to do it in the next 2 minutes so that we can try to get to it before the end. I'm going to start with the last question, actually, that's come in. The question is as follows. I have problems with catastrophizing. I feel like I always want to be prepared and never be shocked with terrible news, past traumas, and 9 out of 10 times, the worst never happens. I continually do it, though, and it takes such a negative toll on me. Any advice on how to begin retraining that mindset?
Yes, thank you for saying that, because you're not alone. People do it all of the time. or you know what, I just did it myself. Okay, so one of the things is watch your language. So all or nothing statements, the catastrophizing, I'm thinking you might have done some work on this before, but if you haven't, it's a really good idea to work with somebody on this, a therapist, a coach, or what have you. Again, it's not uncommon. But I guess a simple word of advice would be, one, watch your language. All or nothing statement. I always catastrophize. Well, you know what? You don't always catastrophize. You catastrophize sometimes, right? So just by saying I sometimes catastrophize, notice how that actually just lowered your anxiety level around catastrophizing. Okay, I sometimes have a tendency to catastrophize. So the first thing you want to do is look at your language, look at the statement, and when you catastrophize, look at the statement and ask yourself, is this statement causing me anxiety or stress? Yes. What am I exactly feeling? Feel it, label it. What am I feeling in my body? Label it. Breathe into the feeling. So you're objectifying, you're moving away from the thought, moving away from the situation, and moving towards self-regulation. Regulate your physiology, do your breathing, and then look at the statement. Is this true and is this logical? Well, no, it's not really logical because 9 out of 10 times, nothing really bad really happens. So it's not really true. Where does it come from? Well, it comes from my early childhood trauma, which blah, 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 and this is what happened to me. But the truth of the matter is, look for growth. I overcame it. Okay, so 1, label the emotion, label the feeling in the body, release the feeling in the body, re-examine the statement. Is this true? Is it logical? Next question, where did I learn it? 3, where's the growth? That's going to help you switch very quickly.
Thank you so much, Eva. All right, next one is from Matt Cross. He asks, how can you evaluate if you're more of a giver or taker? And what are your thoughts on how to balance that in your own relationships?
So very, very good question. I think I just wrote a chapter on this. I wrote a questionnaire on this just recently. But so there are several things you can evaluate. And I'm always going to go back to this. So if all of you have other questions, I'm going to answer probably in the same way to start it off with. How do I feel? When I'm in this relationship, do I feel energized or do I feel exhausted? Right? Let me look at the tally, right? Is this person somebody that I feel that I can go to, that they will hear me out, that can I rely on them? Are they consistent in showing up for me? So look in the way that, so giving comes in many ways. It comes in the form of time, it's time spent. It comes in the form of a listening ear. It comes in I'm talking listening versus giving advice. It's very different, right? When you just want a shoulder to cry and you don't really, I had to learn how to do that myself. Like, they don't want your advice. If they want it, they'll ask. You just want a shoulder to cry on. It comes in the form of, material things, right? So giving comes in many different forms. And so you want to sort of look at what are all the different ways that I give in this relationship: time, love, support, understanding, random acts of kindness, thoughtfulness. There's all different ways that we can give. And then look if that person is also giving back in kind, or if there's a value. So we want to look towards what I call an equal energy exchange, right? So like if somebody wants, they want advice from me. And I think, well, okay, but what's the energy exchange? Right? Not like, I'm just talking about like a person who's off the street, not a friend. But let's say they want advice. Well, what's the energy exchange? Like, I'm going to give you the advice, but there has to be something that I'm getting in return, or else I'm going to end up being depleted if I keep doing that. So again, it's going to come back to you and your sense of, wholeness. And most people give, and this is where I want you to pay attention to. Am I giving because it validates me? So most givers do it because their identity is based on giving. And you want your identity to be based on being whole. And then you give because you can. So I was brought up being responsible, and I got accolades for giving and, being the dutiful daughter. And so I grew up thinking, like, in order for me to have any value, I had to be helping people. And if I wasn't helping people, or if I couldn't help people, which I found as a doctor, there's people I couldn't help, then I would feel defeated or like a failure. until I was able to feel whole within myself, which is that positive mindset, and not base my identity on whether or not somebody received from me or listened to me. I didn't base my value on whether or not I gave, and I now give because I can. So also be able to assess what is the intention coming from when you're giving, to be whole within yourself, and then you're going to be able to recognize whether or not that person that you're with is able to give back in return, or whether they're just not capable. And then you can figure out your limits. I hope
Excellent.
that answers the question.
Thank you, Eva, and thank you, Matt, for the great question. I'm going to combine the next two questions because they're very related. Matt Hunter asks, what do you advise for people who feel overwhelmed with the never-ending list of to-dos of building a company? How do we manage all that with all of the wellness and health practices that I want to do in any given day? Christine Ferrari asks, any suggestions on getting to sleep when the mind is running through to-do lists?
Yes.
How would you
yes.
recommend?
Yes. These are all really, really, really great questions. Again, very common, have happened to me. So I've had to create ways. I'm going to start with active brain syndrome, which is what I call it. So that's why the hour before going to bed is really, really key. I actually, I personally, I wake up really early and I have my meditation practice and exercise practice, and we'll start working pretty early. I actually put a cutoff time to when I stop working. Even if I'm not done, I'll make a cutoff. So make a cutoff time that feels right to you when you actually will stop working and you focus on other things. But at least a minute, an hour, or an hour and a half before going to bed, no work, no thoughts, meditate, clear the mind. Whether you want to do something fun or take a bath or, watch a funny show, no news, nothing that makes you think, but something fun and light. So you want to just lighten up and give yourself that hour before going to bed where you're down regulating. So, start, developing your meditation practice then also, because it's going to help you sleep better and you'll end up going to go to sleep. There's all different kinds of apps that are helping people do that. I recommend that. There's the bedtime stories, meditation apps. There's also listening to the binaural beats. So there's all different kinds of things that you can try that can help sort of calm that mind. But the first intention is actually to create better space for yourself to be able to downregulate, which brings you to this idea of, I've got so much to do. I've got so much to do, right? Well, so what? Right? At the end of the day, what good is it if you're dead? What good is all the wealth and all the success if you're dead and your gas tank is empty? Right? So be self-aware about what is it that I need to do to have the energy to go into the next step. Break up your to-do list into smaller goals. Set those smaller goals for yourself throughout the day, and then ensure that you're refueled in order to do those goals. Do I have enough energy to do this goal? Do I have enough energy to do this goal? Set different, like small breaks throughout the day, an hour, that breath focus on the hour that's going to take you 10 seconds to 1 minute. It's not going to take up a lot of time, but it's actually going to downregulate the stress response and help your mind be clearer. Right? Mind map. I don't know. I think you had Michael Gelb on a few months ago. So mind mapping, if you're not clear about that, it's a wonderful way to get a 360-degree view of what your challenges are in front of you and your to-do list, and then you can sort of break them up into smaller goals. So it's basically making this is my company, or this is my health, and you have that in the center, and then you have arrows coming out of the different facets of what you want to do, and then create the space in there, because you have that 360-degree view of your day. Create that space in there of like when I'm going to do my self-care, because it's about caring for myself so that I can do this. So it's not I have to, really, like it's not it's not on your to-do list. It's in my fuel list. I'm fueling myself so that I can do this. So it's, changing that mindset of how you approach it. I hope that helps.
Excellent. Thank you, Eva. It's very helpful. It took me years to understand that actually some rest and recreation is like a critical to-do list or to fuel list item, because without that, then the next day is not as productive. And so once I got into the mindset that this is actually good for my work, to work a little less, it made a big difference.
So if this helps at all, if you think about athletes, is that in order when you're working out, I don't know if any of you are athletes, but when you're a high performing person or a high performing athlete, their recovery period is just as important as the period when they're working out, right? So rest and recovery are just as important as actually the doing. So the being part is as important as the doing part. So if you don't have time to really be a lot, then bring the being into your doing, right? So bring up practice mindfulness throughout your day. Take that 10-minute, that 10-second to 1-minute break to bring that stress response down. Create opportunities for recovery so that then you can go harder and faster.
Excellent. All right, let's take a couple more. Let's try our best. I know this has been so amazing. If we could just do a couple of quick ones, just a minute on each. One, this is a profound question and really tough to answer fast, but what advice do you have for people experiencing a moment in life that is the equivalent of being chased by a lion? Here, I'm especially thinking of people who are unemployed or in a moment of severe financial distress and feeling fearful about the pandemic.
It's real. It's real. It's like, excuse my French, but that shit is real, and absolutely. So look, there's things that we can control, things we can't control. But when we are in fight or flight response actively, it can motivate us to get away from the lion. But if it's continuous, it's going to literally kill us. And it's going to be self-defeating, and you're not going to be able to get out of that. Resilient people are able to face these challenges this adversity as challenge to be reckoned with, as opposed to situations to fall apart. So it's real, but it is about how do I shift my mindset and do the best that I can given what I have. Right? And so it's not about saying, oh, you shouldn't be anxious. I have every right to be anxious. Remember, validate the way I feel, but work on controlling the emotions. So, meditate, rest, take care of yourself, take it as an opportunity to actually take care, and then seek the support you need to help you manage the situation as best you can. You're going to have to do some research. You're going to have to reach out. You're going to have to make some calls. Those things are very difficult to do when you're anxious and depressed. So it is a time to up the ante, not down the ante, and doing self-care.
Excellent, Eva. Thank you so much. What I'd like to do next is to help us wrap up. I want to ask you, what are the best ways in which our community can best support you, your endeavors? How can we stay engaged with your work and leverage your expertise in different ways? If you have a final word of wisdom to share after that, we'd love to hear that too as a wrap up.
Okay, let's see what I'm doing. I'm writing my 5th book. So, buy my books. That's always great, but mostly because hopefully they'll help you. Of course, I have, I coach people all the time. I have a consulting practice. I'm growing my practice and working in leadership and organizations. My goal is actually to change culture. One of the things I figured out as a practicing physician was that helping one person at a time was nice, but it wasn't enough. And that really the goal is to change culture as leadership, becomes more, as leaders find their light, as I was saying before, then they turn on the light switches for everybody else to find their light. And then we have more light in this world. And so, the real goal for me is to shine my light so that I can help other people find their light switch, especially leaders like yourselves, so that you can make this place a better world and influence the culture of the people around you. And then it becomes sort of this beautiful domino effect. And so any way that you can support me to support you, to do what you do. I always, I was telling my social media folks, I was like, I don't need to have 1 million followers. I just need to have the followers who have 1 million followers, because those are the people I want to influence, because they're the ones that really can make this world better, but make themselves better. So I think that's, for me, what I wish for people, is to find your light, because it's a beautiful thing when people find their light, and it has incredible, I think if nothing else, if you want your life to be richer and happier, that's only going to make everything better. And that's really my goal for people.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for your incredible light. I think you definitely helped all of us here shine a bit brighter today. And more importantly, I think we will be taking that, not just to, our own lives, but we'll be sharing that with everybody, with our loved ones, with the people that we work with. And this was a really, really great kind of opportunity to zoom out and focus on what really matters. So Eva, thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here. I'm very excited to get to meet you in person someday very soon.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. And thank you everybody for joining us. Have a wonderful weekend and see you all again soon. Take care. And thank you once again, Eva. All the best.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.